So now I'd like to introduce to the stage Jenna Smith. So Jenna is the Chief Executive of Papatūānuku Farms, which is a diverse Māori agribusiness located in the Hauraki Plains. Jenna also serves as a trustee and advisor across a range of agricultural businesses. She has an extensive corporate agricultural experience across the Waikato, Canterbury, Otago, Southlands, and has previously worked for state-owned enterprise Pāmu and syndicated overseas investment farm portfolios. But Jen always keeps grounded, or keeps her gumboots in the grass through her and her husband's share milking business. 2021 was a busy year for Jenna. Papatūānuku was a finalist in the Ahu Whenua Trophy, Excellence for Māori Farming that year, and was also named a finalist in the 2021 Xander McDonald Award, which recognised talent and passion for agriculture across Australia and New Zealand. So please give her a warm welcome. Tēnā koe, Jenna.
Ngā mihi nui kia katoa katoa. We are green button?
Green button.
Excellent. Cool. So I'm here to talk to you all today, I guess, about iwi land that sits in a bit of a vulnerable position, like so many. But we're looking to the alternatives, we're looking at our future, and we're looking what opportunities we have while we learn from the challenges that we've been experiencing. Nā poki ke hauraki ka tarahu, e mihi ana ke te whenua, e tangi ana ke te tangata, ko te araha kei roto, ko moeho kei waho, ko tikapa te moana, ko hauraki te whenua. Papatūānuku Farms are located on the Hauraki Plains. It's just slightly southeast of the Bombay Hills, if you don't know where that is. And it's around 2,200 hectares. At the moment, it comprises about 9 dairy farms, a dry stock unit, a blueberry orchard, and a arable operation. We're currently milking 4,600 cows across 1,775 hectares of that block, and produce approximately 1.65 million milk solids. Jointly owned by Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Pawa, Ngāti Tamatara, Ngāti Tara Tokunui and Te Patukirikiri, the farms lie within the Māori land blocks known as Ngārua, Waitakararu and Pūhanga Te Uru. The Waitangi Tribunal confirmed that the iwi of Hauraki had suffered raupatu by the Crown and were marginalised in their own rohi, and they are recognised as being some of the most landless of the iwi in the nation. So Papatūānuku was purchased from the Crown. It was purchased from state-owned enterprise Landcorp after direct negotiations, and I don't need to talk to Taniera about it, he already knows. When the iwi heard that the farms could be sold off to overseas interests, they undertook a fully commercial transaction and used cash from their Treaty of Waitangi settlements. The iwi owners today originally owned the land, which was taken from them by the Crown in the 19th century for the drainage acts in the area at the time. Papatūānuku was returned to the Whai iwi in 2013 in the largest on-account treaty settlement ever made by the Crown. The farms were initially in a 50-50 share milking agreement with Landcorp from 2013 to 2019, and they are now fully operational and operated by the iwi owners under a limited partner agreement. The farms sit on raw peat, which is of varying maturity and depth, so production and inputs are therefore equally quite as variable. Using the weather station data that we have on the farms that date back 25 years or so, coupled with regional information, it shows that the occasional adverse weather event now happens annually, or, as the case of this year, more frequently. In the past 5 years, we've experienced 3 1-in-100-year droughts, and this year alone, we've had rainfall events that have caused significant flooding 3 times. Now, of course, a bit of a dry summer in the Hauraki is not unexpected. You know, we've got an understanding with the rabbits to bring a packed lunch, but the extremities are now being pushed. Droughts lasting 6 months are just something that we haven't encountered before. Declaring drought in May is something we're really not used to. Having 1.4 metres of rain in spring and summer is not our usual. So we sit on land that is pretty sensitive to these extremities. Peat soils can be difficult to maintain and costly. Finding pasture species that can survive these conditions is tricky. And while I'd love to blame the seed companies for the persistence issues we face, I know it's the erratic climatic conditions that throw our pastures into various states of disarray every year. The Crown's land purchase officer, I was tracking back through our deeds, and the Crown land purchase officer in 1895 noted that the swamplands of the Hauraki Plains had a perfectly fine bottom, which was firm, and once drained, there will be no finer land in New Zealand. Now, of course, to carry out such a comprehensive scheme of drainage, it will be necessary to obtain the entire swamp from the natives and drain it completely. Now, I'm not sure if you've been to the Hauraki Plains, but I'm pretty sure it's not the finest land. And if you've farmed on it, you'll certainly know it's not the finest land. And I can't help but wonder if the impacts from draining those peatlands all that time ago lends to the climatic situations that we find ourselves in now. To add to the pressures of volatile weather events, we have peat subsidence of around 2.5 centimetres per year and sea levels rising. Again, I would say we find ourselves on whenua that is sitting pretty sensitive to the extremities. So, what can we do to ensure that this whenua that was hard fought for remains for the future generations of Hauraki? Pretty simply, we just have to be gentler. We're looking at the best and highest use of land. The use of heavy cultivation is often desired on the peaty plains for working in the copious and large amounts of fertiliser and soil conditioners. We have avoided this with switching to all direct drilling practices across our cropping and regrassing programs. We've reduced mechanical drainage significantly, and the use of native plantings to maintain drain bank stability and water quality lessens the risks of over-drainage. Having comprehensive information on the fertility and nutrient levels of our farms has meant that we're only addressing the areas of low fertility where needed, rather than blanket applications. And this, coupled with a couple of other technologies that we've introduced, has reduced the synthetic N application greatly to well under our self-imposed 140 kg N cap. Farm environmental plans have been in place since taking full operational oversight, and this gives us really good knowledge to manage and mitigate the risk at a per farm level. In the seasons following the share milking agreement's end, we reduced the overall herd numbers by around 15%. This in turn resulted in an increase in milk solids per cow per hectare and a resultant increase in profitability. A forever planting plan sees approximately 7,500 plants of harakeke and other native species planted annually across the platform, with riparian plantings of the drains the main priority. Specific plants and species are planted in our cultural paths, which we in turn utilise in weaving, medicines, food, bird habitat, water quality, soil conservation and landscape improvement. Our staff are educated as to how to achieve better outcomes for the land and for the animals. And we have a range of telemetry in place to measure and record our inputs and our outputs. These things, though, for us, they're really just a band-aid to the inevitable gunshot wound that's coming. These measures enable us to continue to farm the product that we are farming right now, maybe for a little bit longer. But what about when we can no longer farm this whenua with animals or with the current crops? So what has been of most interest to me is, since I've come up to the Hauraki Plains in 2019, is really taking in the land's capabilities and looking for our alternate uses. This has seen areas of concern moved away from dairying and into other land uses such as maize and barley grain. A 10-hectare blueberry orchard has been established on our low pH soils, which we have an abundance of. This will be extended by double in the coming 2 years. A former peat mine, which was mined up until the late 2000s, has now been regenerating for 4 years, and we're seeing the return of native plants and native animal species, including Sporodanthus, which is actually one of the plants that helps form peat So to see that return in such a small time frame is just incredibly pleasing. We want to be at the forefront of greenhouse gas emissions mitigations, and we're working collaboratively with lots of various entities, such as Manaaki Whenua at the University of Waikato. This enables us to suitably address and find some options for potential greenhouse gas mitigations. Coupling increased efficiencies through best practice agriculture and restoring ecosystems will see us moving towards a more carbon-friendly footprint. Deriving value from kinder land use is a short-term priority, but a one-size-fits-all approach is difficult with the extreme variances between our dry and wet climate. So looking overseas to other susceptible countries, it's led me to something called polluter which is pretty exciting, and we're in the early stages of seeing some feasibility and some viability of this. But essentially, wet farming, which sounds like something that we might all need to get used to. Polluter farming on re-wetted peat is a system of agriculture for the profitable production of wetland crops under conditions that support the competitive advantage of these crops. In lowland peats, it is typically used by raising the water table to achieve wetland conditions. This is something that recently we've not needed help with. It could be a potential solution for maintaining the profitability of farming peatlands, with the added bonus of significant greenhouse gas emission reductions. The UK government have recently funded a polluter exploration fund on peatlands, with over 80 peatland species identified, with the potential to harvest for bioenergy, food, fodder, medicines and raw materials. However, as with any new value chain proposition, the development of a viable market is crucial. But with over 8.5 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent produced from the drained peatlands in England alone, there has been recognition that this is a mitigation proposition worth exploring. So at the moment, that's pretty exciting for us, and we're working pretty closely with Manaaki Whenua and University of Waikato to see if that's something that we can keep progressing. However, the national level of commitment to biofuel may slow us down a little there. So we certainly don't pretend that we have all of the answers, nor do we think we can find them alone, but we are adamant that remaining adaptive and agile in our farming practices will better position us to ensure we protect the prosperity of the future generations of our Hauraki people. I'm just going to finish this off with a question, question statement, rhetorical, anyway. It's similar to Rod's comment earlier about the ransom for not polluting. I don't see too many farmers in here, but I'll point this one at the farmers, and maybe if you know a farmer, you can ask them next time you see them. Do you really need added value to do what is inherently right for the land that you own? Do you need an incentive to action progress, to protect your future business and your income and your family's lifelines? We're often described as resilient as farmers, but how resilient are we going to be when climate crisis is impacting your daily operation, when no one is coming to pay you for the rest of the season's milk because business interruption from weather is just the norm? Do nothing is no longer an option. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Jenna, for sharing the strategy, the thoughts, the whakaaro of Papatūānuku and the people behind it, the iwi and the hapu there.